Welcome to the Catalyst Life Coaching Podcast with John Kim and Noelle Cordeaux. The next Catalyst Coaching Intensive begins November 5th. If you're inspired to begin your own coaching practice or just want to learn a little bit more about what it's all about, visit shift.us, shft.us, for more information. Your adventure awaits.
Hey guys, what's up? On today's episode, we are going to talk about manifestating. That's what I call it because I don't know how to speak English. It's manifesting, right, Noelle?
It's manifestation, the science of manifestation.
Yes, and this is such a popular topic, and I want to really have fun with this, but I want to dive into the science behind it. I want to see what Noelle thinks. This overlaps the law of attraction, energy, universe, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. It's a good topic. And it's an important topic.
Yeah, I think so. And so let's get right to it. Do you believe in it? And if so, what is your process and how does it work for you?
I do believe in manifestation. The reason that I believe in it is because we enforce mental patterns every day. Intentionally or not. Everything that we do is a mental pattern based on the way we were raised, where we come from, who we hang out with, what we choose to do with our time. And
100%. I agree with you on that.
Oh yeah. So we are creatures of habit, and we are creatures of more than habit. We're creatures of repetitive thought processes that get ingrained in us until we travel through them habitually.
Yeah, I heard that 90% of the thoughts that we have were just the thoughts that we had yesterday for most people, and that's why our lives don't change. We're just thinking the same thoughts.
Yes, that's exactly it. Repetitive thought processes become ingrained until we travel through them like habits. They're like tunnels, you know? Mm-hmm. So manifestation or manifesting things is a real, actual way to disrupt those cycles of pattern and thought, and put something that we want in front of us, something that we want to change, become, acquire in front of us in a new and different way, and redirect our thought patterns towards a new goal, towards a new outlet, towards a new level of existence, towards a new, whatever the fuck it is.
Right.
From a very practical perspective, that's what we're doing.
So there's different elements to this. There's the spiritual piece, there's the neurobiology piece, there's the energy piece, there's I think all these factors that kind of come together. For you, what is the strongest piece for you? And also I want to hear some stories.
Yeah, I mean, for me the strongest piece is neurological, right?
Right.
So we enforce neurological pathways, and the way that we enforce neurological pathways is based on our positive or negative responses. So let's say, one of your goals is that you want washboard abs, right?
Right.
You put washboard abs on your vision board. That's a goal of yours. You're going to manifest it. If you look at that image every day and focus positively on that's what I'm going to do, your thoughts and patterns will adhere to that. But if you focus on that image every day and beat yourself up and you're just I'm such a shit for not doing that, you're going to revert back to those old habits. But, I think that when you set a goal in your mind's eye with a positive focus, like manifestation, actually believing this is going to come true for you, there's really not room for that negative self-talk.
So I think the misconception is that people manifest just by visualizing, and suddenly they're crossing fingers and eating Cheetos on their couch, and they're wondering why they don't have abs. I think that it's a way to have a sharper radar or direction, and then I think that the behavior piece is more. You're more motivated without even knowing it to get what you are visualizing.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah. It's we have to take responsibility for what's going on in our own brain, for the circuitry and for the paths that we're running and creating for ourselves. And manifesting is just a really beautiful, kind, exciting, thoughtful, hopeful way to do it. It also just goes to the larger picture of connectivity, right? So when you're connecting to these ideas, to these new ways of being, you're going to be excited about it. You're going to talk about it with others. We know that connection comes first. Happiness and purpose comes second. So you're connecting all of these neural webs. You're engaging with people differently, and you're really just building life on a different threshold than if you had just said, let's see what happens to me today.
Right.
Have you ever manifested anything?
What's interesting is there's something happening now, and this is just I'll just use this as a really simple example because it happened to me today, or I brought home what I manifested today. So I had a Triumph Scrambler. It's a certain type of motorcycle, and I had no intention on getting rid of it. But about 6 months ago, I started seeing this. It's called a Harley Bobber, a 48. I had this picture and I put it in my phone and I was just staring at it. I really, really wanted it as a second bike. I started getting obsessed with it, right? And a few weeks ago, I had to sell my bike because someone hit it, and the insurance wouldn't cover it. So that came out of nowhere, and the bike, went. And then my brother happened to have a 48. Now, here's what's really interesting. In his garage, but it was the exact same year as the bike that I have the picture of. So, and now it looked a little different, but he doesn't ever write it. So he's like, why don't you just take over the payments and take this bike? So I did that. And then I think because I was visualizing the other one, because it had white wall tires, it had a very specific look. I went to the motorcycle shop and I had it all customized. I just brought it home today, and it looks exactly like the photo that I've been obsessed about for the last 6 months.
That's awesome. Congratulations, number one.
Yeah, so now it's in my garage. And so, someone can argue with that and be like, well, of course, because that's your style, that's what you wanted. Or other people can look at the same series of events and call that a manifestation.
Totally. I mean, it's a combination of focus plus action.
Right.
100%. So I've been joking with everybody this last week that I've been manifesting things left and right. But, when I really sit down and dissect it, I've been also looking for cues in my environment. So, I'm living in LA right now. I'm a stranger in a strange land. I love you and everyone that we work with, but I need friends.
Yeah, 100%.
So, I need people to hang out with. And that's one of the things I was bitching about. I was like, I need friends. And I told everybody, my goal for the month is to find friends that I don't work with. I happen to be on Facebook. And I'm usually just on Facebook for work. I really don't use it for my personal stuff anymore. And I just happen to see that some old friends of mine were in LA. So coincidence, yeah. I was on Facebook. I was looking. There were people that I know from home that I used to hang out with and happened to be in LA. But I took action. I reached out to them.
Right.
And said, okay, boom. We made plans for Friday night. I now have friends in LA that I love, that I had a great time with, that I want to hang out with. So
yeah, so it's not like it's in your intention, you're manifesting it, and then suddenly there's a knock at your door, and here are your new friends. It's you taking action that lines up with what you want.
Exactly. And then, I had a vision board back in my old office with this beautiful picture of the riverfront in Philadelphia, where I'm obsessed with these boathouses. It's beautiful. And lo and behold, about a year later, ended up moving to that neighborhood right by the river. And I can see that just a 10-minute walk whenever I want. Sure, yeah, I definitely put that on my vision board. It was in my mind's eye, but then took action to move towards it. And it's like what we know is that you will channel the flow of what you're focusing on, intentionally or not. So it's just up to us whether or not we want to direct that flow of intention, or whether we want it to be the same old routine that's been taught, bought, and sold.
So yeah, and here's the other piece of it, and a lot of athletes use this. When you are visualizing something, you are imprinting that into your conscious and subconscious. And I think that just every day, we are mostly moving and pulling from our subconscious on autopilot. It's like when you drive your car and you're thinking about something, and you're not thinking about the actual brake or making the left turn. Everything kind of happens. And I think that when you line up what you're visualizing and your intentions, and also like the feeling behind it. And I think this is the other piece. This is why people say that you got to feel like you already have what you're trying to get. That you have to already have that feeling. I think it all just pushes you in that direction. And then of course, there's this whole other piece which is more of a spiritual, is that the universe um, um, giving it to you. So like you're attracting it.
Yeah, and I don't know if I really conceptualize it as like the universe giving it to me so much as there's a very real string of energy that flows from all living things and beings to each other, and that when
Right.
you tap into it with intentionality, you we know this from quantum physics. Like this isn't I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass. Like when you intentionally cultivate what you want to exist, like you have a decent capacity to co-create your reality with the universe and the laws of nature and science and all the people around you.
So do you think that with the universe that it meets you halfway, or do you think it's more, how do you think it works with that?
I think it's a meet you halfway.
Yeah.
I think it is because it's like you can't it's intention plus action.
Right. So, and here's the other piece. I talk a lot about attract versus chase, and my angle with that whole thing, and this is just from my personal experience of looking at my life and what's happened, what's not. Um, Whenever, and this is more about your state. So most of my life, my 30s, my 20s, I was in a very chasing state. So I was chasing shiny things. I wouldn't allow myself to be happy unless I had XYZ. And that chasing state made me extremely powerless. So I would, be someone that I didn't like. I would exchange my truth for a membership. I would, just to get closer to what I really wanted. And because of that, nothing really stuck. Nothing, there's a couple good things happened, but nothing really changed my life. I never achieved quote unquote happiness in that state. Now, after my rebirth and I started pulling from a different place, I started attracting. And by attracting, it wasn't me like just visualizing and crossing fingers and all that, or just a vision board. Attracting was making things greater than me, no more living in a to me state, like anything that puts you on a higher frequency where you are giving instead of taking, and you're holding on to your stance, who you are, what you stand for, that kind of stuff. Then you start attracting, and since then, a lot of good things have kind of naturally, organically, just like fell on my lap.
Yeah, and I think he said something so important there in the last statement is that you naturally, organically, things just started happening. I think that when you're in this state of chase, and you're, running after shining things or inauthentic things, you don't have the bandwidth or you don't have the sense of calm or presence to actually notice what's around you. And it's oftentimes the simple act of noticing what's around you that shows you this fertile soil that's ripe for picking. If I had just been in this state of chase and I was like, I need friends, and I was like looking outside of myself, I would never have noticed that friends I already have are sitting right fucking here.
Yeah, what a great point. I love that. It's like when you buy, like if you went and bought a Prius, you would never notice how many Priuses on the road, but now that you're driving one, you notice there's like Priuses everywhere. It's like that
Yeah.
thing. And I think that you're right. When you are in a chasing state, you're so laser focused on, whatever that you want that is so very specific that you don't have any peripheral. So you're not seeing things under your nose around you. And I think that you're right. I think that the universe, life, God, whatever presents and puts things in front of you. And I think most of us miss it.
Totally miss
And,
it.
and when we are very present and when we are able to notice things and we are, in more of an attracting state, and your frequency's high and you're grateful, then you could actually see all the diamonds that are buried.
Yeah, and you're open to experiences. You're both giving and receiving, and and that's what I was talking about with the universe meeting you halfway. It's like this free flow exchange of giving and receiving. You get back what you give tenfold, and you have to be in a state of openness to receiving to even notice what's on the table.
And I love the simplicity of that. When you're chasing, you're closed, and when you are attracting, you're open.
Mm-hmm.
And the world gets very big.
Oh, huge.
Yeah.
And happy, and I think that you hit different thresholds of satisfaction too with like what matters, like is it the shiny thing or is it a good conversation? Like what's going to sustain you? and just in even just connections with other people. I think when you're in a chase mode, you're so ready to discount others and who they are and what they can offer you, or even what their story might be. And then, but when you're in an attracting mode and an open mode, you're able to like receive other stories and receive gifts from people that you would never have anticipated.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that this whole idea of living open instead of living closed.
So important. It's so important. And, it's so important from a happiness perspective.
Oh
So,
yeah, absolutely.
what we know from studies upon studies upon studies of happiness and Buddhist monks and meditation, and what happiness actually is a physical state of the brain, and you can induce it intentionally. And that comes down to rewiring your thought response to behaviors and environments. And, you know, from that perspective, that's what we're doing with intention setting and looking out into the world to seek what we want, versus having a closed mindset and just like drilling down and, um, feeling unhappy that we don't have it.
Yeah. And I think that when you are so narrow like that and so specific, the reason why I didn't allow myself to be happy is I had a very so there's a difference between a vision board and such a specific definition of happy that if you don't get that exact blueprint, you don't allow yourself to be happy. And so for me, that's what it was. I wanted I was in the movie business, I was a screenwriter, and I wanted a 3 picture deal, and I wanted that the glass house in the hills and the fancy cars and the horseshoe shaped drive. I had a very specific image, and I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting those things, but I wasn't open to anything else,
Mm.
you know. And even today, I still want my toys. I'm a guy. I love cars. I love motorcycles. I mean, I just was telling you how about the the bike I just modified that's in my garage right now, and I want a house in the hills. I still want those things, but I'm actually my mindset's different in that I am not willing to sacrifice who I am or what I believe in or other things like you mentioned, like experiences and stuff like that for those things. So those things come secondary. And two, I'm very open to anything. I'm very open to things coming to me that are the same but different, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, life is wild. Like, you and I never expected to be exactly where we are at this moment in time. Um, I wouldn't trade it. Would you trade it?
My life?
Like, yeah, where you are at this exact point in time, if you were
No,
like given.
you know what? This is one of those questions where if I said I wouldn't, people might roll their eyes like, "Oh, bullshit, you would." Of course, there are things about my life that I want. I want more of. I want financial security. I want this. There's a lot of things that I want and I want to build. But would I trade it? No, I really wouldn't, because I was just talking today. I did a video about what's the best thing that's never happened to you, and I was really thinking about this, and I was like, if back then the thing that was the quote unquote the worst thing that's happened was my divorce and all that, but now looking back, that was actually the best thing that's never happened to me, because that would have set me off into a different path. I would be at soccer games, and I mean, I'm not saying that I wouldn't be happy, but I just wouldn't be. I don't think I'd find purpose, meaning I would definitely wouldn't have helped as many people as I did in the last decade doing this.
I feel the same way. I'm divorced as well, and the complexity of self and of life and the intellectual capacity that I've developed going on the journey that I did would never have come to pass if I
Right.
had, gotten married at age 26 and just like stopped exploring the world at that point. Um, and, I think that level of growth is so vital.
Yeah, and I always joke about this. I tell people that if when I was in the movie club days, and there was a lot of opportunity around me, a lot of friends around me, making tons of money very fast. And I think that if I had hit that kind of success at that age, my 20s and 30s, I would have been the douchebag in the yellow Ferrari.
Totally.
And today, I'd be the douchebag in the red Ferrari. No, today, today it's not even about the Ferrari. It's about not being a douchebag, not being, it's
That's
not
good.
not being defined by the things that you have, but being defined by who you are and the dent that you're making. I just had a conversation, and I think I told you this other day. I just had a conversation because I'm getting a lot of emails now from various media platforms and reality shows and stuff, and I had a conversation with the casting director who was looking for on Bravo or something. They were looking for a reality show about super successful Asian people, and I was asking her to define what success meant because back in the day, my definition of success would be the $100,000 cars and the house in the hills and all this kind of stuff, the rat video, and she said, some of the cast were Chinese, like really good-looking Chinese people in their 30s, and they're billionaires. And I started laughing because I'm definitely, according to that definition, I'm definitely not successful. I'm not Kanye East, right? My definition of success today is like not making $1 billion, but reaching 1 billion people, or what kind of dent I'm making, what kind of flag I'm running with, all that stuff. So it was interesting to hear that, to have that conversation about success and where I was. And it didn't make me feel less than, like, okay, I am not a Chinese billionaire, and that makes me, less successful. It just made me realize how far I've come in the redefining things.
But you are super good looking, John.
Oh, that's so sweet,
I mean,
Noelle.
super good looking. Yes, this is a podcast, but we should tell our listenership you're super good looking.
That's really sweet of you. I don't believe that, but thank you so much. That's
I don't knock it off. But you know what's crazy to me about that measuring stick is that that a measure of success would be people who are billionaires in their 30s, and the reality is that most people, most humans who live on this earth don't have access to a safe place to live, running water,
Right.
food, and shelter every
Right.
day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we're just like looking at civilization as a whole, if you have access to a safe place to live, clean running water, food, and shelter, you're better off than the majority of the population on the globe.
Yeah.
So how the fuck did we ever get to being a Chinese billionaire who's good looking in your 30s? As like you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
the yardstick is so fucked.
Yeah, absolutely. Gary Vee talks about just you basically won the lottery because you came out as a human being and not
Right.
like you're not a frog or a tree.
Right. I mean, I'd like to come back as my own dog. Like George has it better than I think.
Oh, I'm sure. Dogs are. Oh my! I think dogs. I think Bukowski said this. Dogs are angels on Earth.
Right.
I love dogs. Yeah, they're just so transparent and amazing animals.
And he isn't good. He doesn't do shit around the house. Like, come on.
They're so present. They're the most present creatures oh my God, dogs are the most, and like they also don't hold, I don't know, do they hold grudges? I mean, I know they have, trauma and shit like that, and they can be reactive, but
The dogs hold grudges. I get like mad shade whenever I've been gone for 3 months and I come home. Like, oh, you're home, huh?
So let's end with giving people some tips and encouraging them to play around with this. You're gonna have your own story with this. I was just hanging out with my friend Katie, and she was talking about how every month she writes down in her journal her intentions and what she wants to manifest, and they're very, very specific, smaller goals. They're not like huge things like, becoming a millionaire or something ridiculous. And she says everything has come true, whether it took 3 months or 6 months or whatever. And of course, there's a lot of hard work behind that push to make it happen. But she's a believer. And so there's a lot of people who believe in this. And of course, there's tons of videos and all this stuff. But I think you have to kind of play around with it and make it your own, so you're not taking someone else's recipe, because you have to experience it and to have those revelations so you really believe in it. If you just say, okay, here's how someone else is doing it, I'm going to do it this way, and then it doesn't work, or you're going to try to convince yourself to believe in it, then there's something false about it. It's not going to work.
Yeah, so I think that there's only one thing that's really universal with this, and it's consistency.
Right. You can't be like, okay, if I don't get what I want in the next week, fuck, this is stupid.
Right. Like it has to be a long-term commitment and a long-term practice, not only towards conceptualizing and visualizing what you want in life and moving towards it and being open to it coming in different forms, but also a commitment to letting your brain dwell in joy and productivity and peace. You know, you're not going to manifest anything if you're sitting in a negative stance, if you're angry at the hand you've been dealt, and if you're resistant to going after it yourself.
Yeah, I think that's the soil. I think that's the beginning. If you are trying to manifest with white knuckles and deep furrows like I have, and you're trying to force shit, I don't think anything's going to happen. Just a lot of frustration.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, you do have to, you do have to practice. And I like anything, I think it's threaded into your life. It's like fitness or like anything you want to change about yourself. You can't, it's not a light switch. If you want to start manifesting and playing around with that and your frequency and living on higher and on a bigger state or on a more powerful state, it's something you have to thread and practice every day. It's not something that you just like, okay, here's my list, I'm going to do it tomorrow and see what happens.
Yeah, it has to be every day. And there has to be a certain sense of like, just keep getting up again. There's grit involved.
Yes, absolutely. Here's the other piece. And I was telling Noelle this today because we started this conversation at lunch. So let's say you don't want to believe it. Let's say you're like, oh, those guys are idiots, or people who believe in anything like that. That's, whatever. Like, I want to see proof, etc. So then, what's the alternative? To believe in nothing?
Well, I mean, those are two very clear mindsets, right? It's the fixed mindset of this is the hand I've been dealt.
Or the growth mindset.
Or the growth mindset of I can change. I can transform.
Yeah, and by the way, let me insert that Carol Dweck did studies. I don't know if it was Harvard or Stanford. She has a book about this, about mindsets, and that was the number one thing that separated people who were successful from people who weren't. And it was, if you have a fixed mindset, you're living with a ceiling and you're not going to go far. If you have a growth mindset, you're able to not only think big and wide and have resiliency and all that, but play around with things like this and be successful. Create your own. Create whatever you want to.
Absolutely. And sometimes the creation is just even in how you choose to experience moment to moment.
Yeah. And here's the other thing. There's tremendous power in belief. I know that firsthand by when I was, I don't CrossFit much anymore, but when I was doing the lifting, Olympic lifting in CrossFit, I would literally walk up to the bar and test this on myself. I would walk up to the bar without thinking, letting myself be afraid, not believing I could do it, and then see how that went. And most of the times I wouldn't be able to lift a weight, right? Then I would take a breath, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, walk up to the bar, and whether I'm saying it out loud like a mantra or convincing myself before I even walked up to the bar that I can do this, I believe it with every fiber of my being, the bar would go up all the time. Every single time.
Awesome.
And so I know there's power in belief, and I know that actions and intensity and energy all lines up with what you believe. I believe that your belief is the rudder, in the direction that you're going to go. So a lot of this, even if you don't believe it, but you choose to, and you really start to, believe it, it's like loving. It's a choice, and you start to lean in that direction. Just the believing in itself, I think, can be powerful.
100%. I have a crazy story to close with.
Yes.
It just came to me. So when you and I started our very first Facebook group years ago, Shift Secret, it was like one of the first few days, and we were all posting our goals. Mm-hmm. This was years ago. Yeah. So what I posted in that Facebook group and was accountable to like the 500 initial members at the time was I said I wanted to be a bi-coastal coach in between LA and Philadelphia so I could see my good friends' kids grow, and I wanted to be in the PhD program. Well, now years later, I got into the PhD program, trucked through it and then eventually quit to take this job, but I'm fucking bi-coastal watching my good friends' kids grow up, and I'll be damned if that shit didn't come to pass.
Oh my God, that is true. I didn't think about
Yep.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and let me share one more story. So, 7, 8 years ago, when I first started doing this, I before before like the Facebook secret groups and all that technology, um, I was on Tumblr, and I remember creating a group blog, and what I envisioned was this kind of like private forum where people can share videos and stories, and almost like a virtual group. And of course, many years later, we have that, and
We do.
there's 7,000 plus people, and it's
Hmm.
just feeding on its own. And it's been a while, so I don't really think about the transition. But if I really take a snapshot of what I imagined then, I called it the treehouse, and what it is now, it's exactly what I had in my head. Is actually
Hmm.
technology caught up, and it was now it's it's being executed. So yeah, that's definitely something that was in my head that has come to life.
It's incredible. And so now, as much as I bitch about LA all the time, like I fucking did that shit to myself.
Yeah, right, right. You imagined it. Here it is. Be careful what you visualize or what you want.
Right?
Yeah. Well, guys, if anything, we hope that this conversation was interesting, challenging, or made you answer, ask yourself more questions, and to get you to explore just different ways of living. That's what it's about, Noel. It's not about like believing in one thing or another, but it's just about being open and being curious, like we were when we were 3. Eating ants and shit.
Yeah.
Like, what does this taste like? What is that? And I think when we kind of fall into that state and we start to get really thirsty for adventure, and we're really curious, judgment goes out the window, and we start getting curious about people. We start getting curious about what we can do and all this kind of stuff. And suddenly, I just think that's when stars line up and good shit happens. And I think that's when you start moving closer to your potential.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, guys, manifest anything that you want
Within reason.
within reason. Yeah, hold on. And do it with consistently, and research it and make it your own. And what else?
And let us know how it goes. Tag into the Facebook group. We love getting emails. Find us online. We'll keep talking about our own journey. My mind is blown right now, sitting here realizing that I posted that years ago, that I wanted to be bi-coastal and in that PhD program. I'm literally in LA living it right now.
Yeah, and if you guys want to see that post, visualize it, and you will manifest going into our secret group called "This Is Your Tribe" on Facebook. And that was what I had in my head many years ago on Tumblr, so you could actually jump in there and experience that as well.
Awesome.
All right, guys.
Dude. I'll
well.
catch up with you later.
Later.
Thanks for listening to the Catalyst Life Coaching Podcast presented by SHFT. If you'd like to learn more about what you've heard on today's show, head to shift.us. That's SHFT.us for more information. Feel free to rate us, review us, and tell a friend.